Howdy, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Monday. I'm going to give it a few minutes here because I know we had a 1 o'clock start or 1 o'clock Central Time for me, but give it a minute or two, Aaron, and then we can go ahead and kick it off if that works.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew.
Perfect. And since we are about a minute into this, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. To introduce myself, if you haven't met me yet, I'm Andrew Ramirez. I'm one of the BDMs on our Lenovo ISG team here at D&H. I'm joined by Aaron from Lenovo. Aaron, I don't know if you want to give a quick kind of brief breakdown of your role and title, and then I can kind of get the presentation started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. So I'm Aaron Rothfuss, as Andrew mentioned. I'm with Lenovo, and I'm on Lenovo's alliances team on the ISG side of the business. So I manage our Microsoft relationship for North America, primarily responsible for the OEM, traditional business like we'll be talking about today. But I also manage our Azure local business, which has been growing at a pretty rapid rate, and also our Azure business. So thank you.
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Then we're good there.
There we go. Yeah,
yep.
The agenda.
There we go. Perfect. And then I was going to see, I'm not sure if we have the team slide in, but if not, just a quick brief breakdown of my role as well. So as the BDM, we have a team of 14 of us here at D&H that covers Lenovo ISG. And I'd like to just let everyone know that because we're a growing team, similar to, you were saying, Aaron, a fast growing market for kind of local Azure and Microsoft, as a whole within Lenovo. Lenovo ISG is a huge growing area for Lenovo and D&H, right? Our team has grown from 3 people 2 years ago to 14 now, and all the team side at the end. But I just like to call it out to let everyone know, I think that speaks volumes, not only to the investment of Lenovo and D&H, but also D&H with Lenovo. And so that's why we like to host these kind of things and make sure Aaron is on to speak to everyone. So with that, I'll kind of kick it over to you, Aaron. And then, like I said, if any questions throughout, please let us know. And then as you're hearing this, I'll kind of wrap up at the end, but think of some customers and your, customer base that you want to have conversations about this. And myself and my co-BDMs can help drive that with you and Aaron afterwards. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, I guess, depending on exactly where you're located. I'm here in Raleigh, where we got our first fake fall, and now we're back into our second or third summer. Supposed to be 90 this week. But again, very nice to spend some time with you today. And we'll really be talking about Windows Server 2025 here. The demand for Windows Server 2025 is continuing to ramp up here at Lenovo. If you were made aware by your Lenovo team, or if not, the Windows Server 2022 offering, which preceded 2025, actually went end of license last month. So what that did was that kind of forced, we were the last of the offerings available to customers, right? So at the launch of 2025 in October of last year, customers that purchased through other licensing models such as Azure or Open Value or things of that nature were forced to 2025 at that point. The OEMs, because of our integrated sales cycles and such, we were able to sell the 2022 offering for almost an additional year. But now that has also come to an end. So with that coming to an end, and we'll talk about how you can still get 2022 in a little bit here. But with that coming to an end, we are seeing a massive uptick in Windows Server 2025, which led us to, kind of want to have this discussion with you guys or have this presentation. So really what we're going to talk about is number one, kind of how to acquire the product, right? And what the OEM product offers and is, in case you're not familiar, and the value that it brings. And then we're going to talk about Windows Server 2025. And again, some of these market considerations for Windows Server 2025. So if your customer is reluctant to deploy 25 or migrate to 2025, hopefully having some of these discussion points will help you with those conversations. First off, I wanted to state, in case you didn't know, right? Lenovo is a massive organization, right? And we are most often thought of as a devices or laptop organization. I think ThinkPad has been a pretty successful line for us, but we also are number one in server reliability. We are growing our server market share year on year, so it's a growing market for us. We hold almost 600 server benchmarks. So that goes for anything from, SQL to Windows Server to Exchange and things of that nature. You can find all those in the links to this presentation. But again, it goes to show you that we not only have reliable hardware, but our hardware is purpose built. Being a ODM ourselves and not procuring hardware pre-built from some of the other ODMs gives us some strategic advantage, and we can build chassis and motherboard designs to optimize workloads. So we do that. We are proud sponsors. Our newest one is going to be FIFA. We will be sponsoring the World Cup in 2026 here in the United States. That's going to be exciting. I hope everyone that's a soccer fan gets to go to that. It's huge here in Raleigh. We have a lot of club soccer here, so I know my kids are excited to potentially get to see a game or two of that. But we also sponsor the Hurricanes, and we have now for a few seasons, so that's really exciting as well. So you'll see our name relative to this slide. You'll see our name everywhere. So I hope this will help drive demand for you as well. What I also want to impress upon you is we have a one Lenovo relationship with Microsoft. And I think that's really important. Again, we're going to talk about server today, but YY, our CEO's envisionment for Lenovo is to be a provider from the pocket to the cloud, meaning we have mobile devices and we have mobile devices that run mobile applications from a Microsoft perspective. Client, like we mentioned with ThinkPad, of course, Win 11 is our predominant operating system on our devices. To the server, which we're talking about today, and then to the cloud, right, with Azure. So with our hybrid cloud strategies around Azure Local and even providing hardware to cloud service providers. All right, so why OEM Windows Server? So if you aren't aware, right, OEM is a third, I guess I would call it, offering that Microsoft has to procure Windows Server, to procure the operating system. All servers require an operating system, right? And Windows Server is about 90% of the market. So 9 out of every 10 servers we ship end up with some form of Windows Server on them. So it's a big TAM, it's a big opportunity for us. And it is the Windows Server offering, or the Microsoft offering, is our highest level of attach. We sell, thanks to you guys, we sell Windows Server on about 30% of the servers that we sell. So 3 out of 10 end up with OEM on them, which is awesome, coming from Lenovo. But why this is a benefit to the customer, right? Number one, there's no contracts. So when we think about other forms of licensing, like I mentioned, the Azure, Open Value, you sign contracts to get those. With OEM, there's no contract. It is a perpetual license, meaning once you buy it, you own it. So there's no service renewals. Again, there's no licensing renewals. The server itself can be sold, or the license can be sold with the server, which is a huge value, right? So when you purchase server from Lenovo, manufactured by Lenovo, we'll pre-install it. It'll come ready with all the right drivers and firmware. And it can significantly cut down bench time, or can also add reach to some of your customers and partners, right? So if they've got facilities on the other side of the country and they want to send, servers to the East Coast, West Coast, wherever they need to be, they can come ready to go. So they plug them in, they're already connected, they set them up to the internet, and then they can redeploy everything else they need. Really great strategic advantage that we can offer. One reason why we see acquisition and we see growth within partners that currently use OEM is price, right? Typically, Windows Server and its accompanying parts are a known price in the channel. Again, the other 70% of the 30 that I mentioned are those other brand or other medium offerings. What that means is that customers have an expected price to pay for these. So if you or your partners can procure these for less, that means more margin for you and your customers. So a lot of our partners love that, right? They can take that to the bottom line. They can use it to win the deal in general, right? They can leverage it to blend the margin across the deal. So it's a strategic advantage that they've figured out, which I think a lot of partners would be very interested in understanding a little bit better. And last but not least, it's a physical product. It sounds funny to say that because everybody always asks me, hey, where's the link to the Volume License Service Center or the Azure portal? And that's all well and good until the admin leaves, or until something changes and we forget our password or whatnot. This being a physical product is really simple. Once you install it, once it's up and running, it's good to go. There's no additional keys or updates required. So let me go back before I move here. And I do see there's no support directly from Microsoft. So correct. So with OEM, OEM is the same as all licensing, right? So no Microsoft licensing inherently comes with Microsoft support. It's added to contracts or it's paid for by the hour. Lenovo is very similar. All right, so from an OEM standpoint, there is no service that comes with it. We will help with installation support. So, getting the customer, like if they have an issue with loading a VM or getting it on the bare metal, firmware driver issues, those types of things we'll help with for sure. Or if the product is damaged, we'll help as well, right? Because it is physical. Some customers damage the license key or the media is damaged in transit or in creation. We'll absolutely help there and mitigate those problems. If customers require additional support past that, so if they want migration support, application support, Hyper-V support, or Active Directory support, we do have what's called enterprise software support. It is in our configurator. D&H has the ability to configure it for you guys. It is a set fee, right? It's not a scope of work product. It's an easy set fee. And it comes for the term of your server warranty. So 3, 4, or 5 year, unlimited number of calls. Again, we have it for just base OS support. If you need basic things, again, Hyper-V, Active Directory, stuff like that. Or we have what we call OS Plus application support. So things like Exchange, SQL, etc. This is, again, an extremely aggressively priced offering. Typically, you will pay for the entire 3 years of ESS with one service call to Microsoft based on the hourly rate. So again, if customers do need that additional support past kind of that boot support, we call it, that would be the avenue to go and get that.
And I just had a quick question about that. So when this is a physical unit and it does ship, is it typically shipped with a server, if you buy it with a server? Only because I've had partners ask before, they've said, hey, customer isn't sure where the license is. And I think it's typically kind of attached to the server almost, but figured worth mentioning for everyone here.
Yeah, I think you were reading ahead on the slides because that's the next slide.
Perfect.
So absolutely, right? So we have 3 ways to deliver this product. ROC, or reseller option kit, as we affectionately call it, is where it kind of marries in the channel at D&H, right? So that's where we would have physical product, kitted product that you can add to any of the Lenovo servers, right? And that's BTO or CTO. It's just kind of an after or with the fact outside of Lenovo manufacturing. We also have 2 options inside Lenovo manufacturing in our CTO process. The first is called drop-in box. So that means that we just take that COA sticker, adhere it to the chassis, and then send the server on its way. The second would be pre-install. And what I really like about pre-install is that it's free. There's no additional cost for us to pre-install it. But what we would do there, obviously, is take the sticker off, adhere it to the chassis, and then we would put on our master image based on the customer specification. So we can set up the RAIDs and do all that as well. The only thing to remember about pre-install is we only pre-install the current operating system. So right now we're installing Windows Server 2025. We do install all versions, right? Essential, Standard, and Data Center. But we do not pre-install 2022 or 2019 on our servers. Let's see here. Sorry, just reading the question here real quick. Yes, we can provide some information around that ESS support within the DCSC tool so that you can get it. But it is basically, again, it's very simple. It follows whatever server warranty you take. So you have to take 3, 4, or 5 year. And then it's by the number of CPUs in the server. So a single CPU server would come with a 1P support, and a 2P, 4P would come with the subsequent support. But we can get that over too for sure. All right, so what we sell, right? So we sell Windows Server in 3 editions. We sell Essentials, which is only offered via OEM. So that is a product that's only sold by OEMs. This is for your entry-level servers. So think your ST45s, ST50s, ST250s, entry level, right? Where a customer has less than 25 users or 25 users or less. They can have up to 50 devices. So if you have customers that have perhaps a laptop and a mobile phone that they want to log into the AD, you can have 25 users with 2 devices. That's perfectly fine. But after you go past that 25 users, they would have to purchase a full copy of standard, right? There is no upgrade. So make sure you have that conversation. But this works great in the SS of SMB. We sell a lot of essentials into that space because it's about half the price of standard, and there's no CALs required. So when you think about that, it's almost about a third of the price of standard. You are able to remotely administer Essential Server. However, you are not able to create VDI instances. So there's no remote desktop services brokerage support for Essential Server. That is sometimes a sticking point as well. Again, that would be a feature of standard if the customer requires VDI support. The other caveat is that it is a single processor only supported operating system, and up to 10 cores for Essentials. So again, it's going to be a truncated core support. So just make sure customers are aware of that. But again, we do sell quite a bit of it. Windows Server Standard is the full function, comes with 2 virtual machines, requires client access licenses for either user or device. And again, these you can stack. So if a customer has 3, 4, 6, 10 virtual machines, you can do multiples of standard to get them up to that VM total that they need. And then when we talk about the full feature product, that's going to be data center. That's your enterprise product, right? That's going to come with unlimited virtual machines. It is also going to come with the S2D for things like your Azure Local and so forth, if you do not want to run Azure Local OS. Customers often ask me what the break even is. I tend to tell them it's about 10 VMs. So if a customer has around 10 VMs, you want to start having the data center discussion with them. All right. Just a quick version comparison guide for you guys. I'm not going to drain this one, but absolutely, if you need a side-by-side like I just kind of spoke about, feel free to leverage that. Now, the one other thing I can tell you is that, again, with the customers purchasing about 90% of the time, this is a great way to accelerate growth. So if you have partner growth goals, if, tiering and such like that, right? Like we have here at Lenovo with our partners, this is a great way to capture share of wallet and get those customers to grow because they're going to be purchasing this already. And again, when they see the price advantage, you will definitely be creating value and winning the business. But this just gives you a quick idea. In the first instance here, it's about a 140% incremental revenue there. And on the second one, about the same, right? So the data center and standard, which these are at MSRPs, are listed here along with the client access license estimates. You can quickly see how 5,000 turns into 12 and how 900 or so turns into 2,200. So absolutely great value. And again, don't forget things like SQL and remote desktop services as well. SQL has been growing pretty quickly for us. And again, really great value there as well. Now, as I mentioned, we will discuss how we get to Windows Server 2022. So if a customer requires 22 or 2019, they can purchase a Lenovo downgrade kit. These downgrade kits are typically $15 to $20, not very expensive. And really all that's covering is the procurement cost for us and the shipping costs, right? There's not a lot of markup on these. But what they will come with is your installation media and a key for those downgrade versions. And this is extremely helpful. If you follow Microsoft's path to activate a downgrade in OEM, so say you buy System Builder, System Builder requires you to own a previous version. And again, most customers will, right? Most customers that are migrating will have it, some won't. but you would use the existing key. Now, what we find is when you use the existing key, about 75% of the time it errors out, right? It says this key has been activated too many times for the usage. Well, then you have to go to the clearinghouse and you have to give them the key, and then they have to rearm the key. And this whole process can take an hour or two if you're proficient at it, right? If you get the right prompts and the backup isn't too long. And again, that's not horrible, but it is if that tech or that salesperson could be closing business or solving tech issues or resolving customer sat on your side that doesn't relate to this. So that's why, I recommend that anytime a customer requires Windows Server 2022 or 2019, that you leverage our downgrade kits. It simplifies it, no hassle, no mess. But again, you can always use the Microsoft OEM traditional downgrade process. Last thing I'll show you, and this is a public site, right? Really easy to get to, the Microsoft Licensing Calculator. So the Microsoft Licensing Calculator allows you to fill in 3 simple fields, and it will pump out the part numbers that you were speaking about around, how many quantities, what do you need? This is the VMs and everything. So really simplifies the purchasing. If you do configure to order through Lenovo, all that is done through backend rules and so forth, or what do you call them, AI now? Backend rules to make sure that the right amount of licensing is purchased. But if you are going rock, this is definitely something that I'd recommend just to check and make sure you've got the right quantities and counts and part numbers. And again, these links will be in the deck that you guys get after the presentation, right here. All right. Let me see if we got any other questions. I don't think we do. All right. So Windows Server 2025, right? So Windows Server 2025, we're going to go through quick history of the reliability, right? So we're going to talk about where it came from, where it is. Then we are also going to go through some security features, the pillars for success for 2025, customer feedback, top priorities, and then we'll talk about 2025 versus Azure Local, because I get that all the time. People think it's the same. So we'll review that real quickly. So Windows Server. Windows Server has been around forever, right? We were talking, the better part of 30 years of innovation. And what this really means is that it is designed to meet the customer's needs, right? They've been there all along. So they're learning feedback by the millions, right, to make this product better. And with every edition, Windows Server has been getting better and making it seamless for customers to upgrade and secure their environments. And with security in mind, really that is the future initiative of Windows Server. So if we think about previous versions of Windows Server, it had a bunch of security built into it. However, a lot of that security was disabled by default. So when you installed the server, when you received the server pre-installed with 2022 or 2019, there were tons of security features in there. But again, most of them were turned off and you had to go enable them. And again, it was thought that, this eased the customer installation process, this eased the usability, and it did, but it did for criminals too. So it kind of wasn't the best route. Now Microsoft is taking more of a proactive security stance, right? Security by design, and that second bullet, security by default, meaning that when they receive this new Windows Server 2025 or they install Windows Server 2025, there are going to be a lot of security features that are pre-enabled. And I think there'll be a bit of growing pains at first. I just upgraded myself to the new Outlook about a month ago, and I'm still right-clicking and left-clicking where I'm not supposed to and learning it. But I learned also that the amount of time I spend making mistakes, I more than make up for with some of the automation with things like Copilot and automated responses and stuff that it's gained me just in the prompts that it offers. And I think you'll find the same thing with the security by default of Windows Server 2025 coming from the factory. When we talk about the 3 pillars, you'll notice security is number 1. And I like to start with that security slide because I want to reiterate a bunch to you that security is the top priority for Windows Server 2025. The second priority, which picks up from 2022 and drives it a little bit further, is cloud agility. We'll get into that, right, and what that means. And then the last one is high performance, right? As Intel and AMD continue to innovate, high performance and future ready infrastructures are extremely important to harness the money that you're investing in these infrastructures. So first off is security, right? When we talk about security, we're really talking about the overview that enhances Active Directory security, such as security first. We're talking about LDPA encryption, the connections that protect sensitive directory data, right? So instead of having it get out there, these are already enabled. So these are going to help protect your customers. So when they say, why should I upgrade? These are probably the most important reasons, protecting their data. It does have TLS 1.3 support. So when we talk about the LDAP over TLS connections, again, protecting that data while in transit, absolutely top priority. Again, stronger default machine account passwords. So when we look at adding accounts online, I'm sure you guys have seen this new feature pop up where it says, would you like me to auto pop a security password? It comes up with some, 16 digit or so alphanumeric password option. Similar passwords are being enabled on Windows Server 2025 as you set up ADs and so forth, again, to make sure that it is completely ready to go and secure. And then last but not least, there's been several security improvements for the SMB market specifically. So we always talk about enterprise SMB, but we are seeing a resurgence in SMBs purchasing Windows Server or purchasing on-prem hardware. And some things like that are going to be the NTLM blocking. So it supports safe connections outbound from these devices, where again, sometimes you would see local area networks or things connected that weren't exactly safe. So this helps this. Local administration password solutions. So enhancing the improvements around account management, simplification, administration accounts, groupings, things of that nature, so that the right people have access and the right permissions without having to click through every single setting. The second piece of it is cloud agility. And again, we are seeing, if we take a step back a little bit, I think Microsoft 15 years ago, at least from the perspective that I saw, was a cloud-first perspective. And what I mean by that is they were looking at on-prem workloads, and they were saying, how do we get those workloads to the cloud, right? We would love to see everything in the cloud. And Microsoft had a bunch of different stances for that. One of them was security-led. One of them was innovation-led and so forth, right? But as their operating system, like Windows Server 2025, and as hardware started to catch up to the cloud productivity levels, you heard Microsoft's story change, right? You saw what was the Azure Stack HCI become Azure Local, right? You saw what was a hard-coded OS like Windows Server 2022 become Azure Local OS and a brand new operating system to manage it, right? So you're seeing Microsoft change their strategy from cloud first to cloud smart, right? Where does it make sense, or why does it make sense to compute in the cloud versus on-prem? And it really is an action that you guys can take to better understand your customers' environments, because there is a lot of repatriation going on. And what do I mean by that, right? Well, repatriation is when a customer takes a cloud workload that's already existing, already running in the cloud, and brings it back on-prem. And they can do that for a lot of reasons, right? They can do that for cost. They can do that for latency or speed of acquiring or changing that data. They can also do it for just proximity of data gravity, right? How often do I use it? Am I getting charged egress fees and things of that nature, right? So there's a lot of reasons, but we are seeing a lot of customers repatriate their data. So having cloud agility, being able to move data in and out of the cloud safely, is a high priority for Windows Server 2025. Also things like hot patching, right? So if you want people to rely and implement on-prem, they need to be ensured that that on-prem environment is going to deliver the same way a cloud experience would. So that doesn't mean it gets shut down for 4 hours while it does updates. It has to do rolling updates and hot patches, things that allow the environment to stay active while maintaining security and maintaining product updates. The other difference that they did with Windows Server 2025 is they integrated Azure Arc into the product itself, right? So Azure Arc was an overlay for Windows Server 2022. And now it's actually built into the product. So the console sits in there. The same as you would see through your Azure portal, you would see on your on-prem, and you can manage that with your Windows Server 2025. So again, really giving customers that cloud feel, but on-prem. The chat is pretty quiet. If you guys do have any questions, feel free. I will do my best to read the tiny, tiny font on the bottom right-hand side of my screen, but I will get back to you. If I can't do it, I'll make Andrew do it. He can take his whole screen and blow it up. But please, if you have any questions on this, please put it in the chat or the previous material about the OEM product. And then the last piece of it here on the pillars, right, is high performance, future ready infrastructure. So we've all been dragged into the AI conversation, right? Whether or not we agreed to it or we were voluntold, we are all in that conversation now. But absolutely, GPUs are taking over the world. I don't know if anybody follows kind of the IDC tracking or the industry tracking for data center compute, but I noticed recently NVIDIA made a major investment in Intel, which is kind of interesting because if you look back 20 years, Intel was dominant. So dominant, they bailed AMD out, right? And now NVIDIA is bailing them out, right? So NVIDIA now represents close to 80% of all data center compute, which is just amazing. But that goes to show you that GPUs are a big part of data center compute these days. So with that, Microsoft has introduced GPU partitioning, which allows you to take these monsters of a GPU and break them down into segments and dedicate them to specific workloads. So absolutely. Saw a question pop in.
And I think Lavin was just saying he just recently installed
gotcha.
it. No major questions, but yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you're enjoying 2025. Yeah, it is simple to install, and we are hearing all sorts of positive feedback from the community. So thank you for posting that. The second thing is containers, right? So if you guys aren't familiar with containers, I would start to think about, familiarizing yourself with them. But Windows Server 2025 has improved container support. So again, that goes back to security, increased speed, and again, fluidity with cloud. So one of the easiest ways to move workloads to and from the cloud is via the container model. So I think you will begin to see more and more use of containers, but Windows Server 2025 enables your customers to do that. We've already talked about the hot patching and the rolling upgrades, but yes, the OS upgrades for Windows Server 2025 are a lot easier, more seamless than before. So absolutely. Larger virtual machine support and also standard software-defined storage enhancements, right? So when we think about S2D and so forth, right? What's interesting about S2D, right, is if you remember Microsoft Ignite, I think it was 3 years ago now, coming up in San Francisco here very soon, so closely approaching 4 years ago. Microsoft had introduced S2D to the world, and that was the first name of Azure Local, right, was S2D. And at that point in time, Microsoft came on stage and they tested live their S2D benchmarking, and they got close to 13 million IOPS out of a single cluster. Microsoft, and people ask me all the time, like, what do they do now? It's 4 years ago, a couple of Intel generations ago or AMD generations ago. What do the benchmarks look like today? And I said, well, I don't know. And they said, well, why don't you know? Like, wouldn't that be something that people are really interested in? I said, well, no other hyperconverged or software-defined infrastructure solution has beaten that benchmark. So Microsoft really hasn't gone back and benchmarked it because no one's been able to overclock or beat that benchmark to date. So I think they're very proud, is what I'm getting out of this functionality. And I think it's actually undervalued. I think that running S2D as a storage environment is very worth a look at, and will absolutely make Azure Local a great offering with Windows Server 2025. Another question came in. It says, what about migration support? So that's a really good question. Microsoft actually just released their Azure Migrate tool, which will migrate not only Windows workloads from different versions of Windows, but will also migrate competitive workloads. So this was in public preview for the better part of 8 months or so. It just got released. I would highly recommend checking out that tool. The other tool that we often use would be Veeam as a backup tool, right? So backing everything up and then just blasting it back onto whatever OS container or VM that you would require. But we are actively creating SOWs with Azure Migrate as the offering of choice to start moving folks off of competitive SDI infrastructures, as well as legacy operating systems. As again, we didn't talk about it on this presentation, but security, right? So end of support is a big thing as well, right? And as things like Windows Server 2019 roll out of mainstream support, and then off of extended support, we absolutely want to have conversations with our customers about migrating, because again, if you're paying for extended security updates, they're very expensive. They typically run about 75% of the cost of the license annually, so not a cheap venture. But also if they choose to forego those and kind of risk it, if you will, should they get hacked, or should there be a problem with their infrastructure from a security perspective, or an audit perspective, right? Things like HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, and so forth, they're a complete business risk, right? Most of the insurances that they have around those things are null and void if they're not running a supported operating system at time of attack or breach or audit. So absolutely worth having a conversation around that as well. But again, I can get you guys some more information. D&H can help as well around the migration paths, as well as services offerings if you guys need those as well. So again, I think the chat said it too, right? But the customer feedback that we're hearing is much easier patching in lifecycle management. So one of the big challenges that was perceived, and I think that's why this is pretty awesome that it's coming out this way, is that with those increased security kind of enactments, if you will, that it would be tougher to manage, right? That it would be tougher to do patches and things of that nature. But Microsoft has worked diligently to make that an easier process, and even easier than Windows Server 22, while maintaining that security. We're also seeing better hybrid cloud capabilities, right? So we're seeing workloads that are able to run both on-prem and in cloud that do not need refactoring, right? So you do not have to rebuild it so it'll operate in the cloud, or debuild it, if you will, so that it'll run on-prem. So that's great. And also profiles can go north and south as well. The last thing here that I want to get into with you guys, I'll skip these features, is our resources, right? So we have a lot of resources here for you. I know you guys ask a bunch of great questions in the chat, but if you guys need additional resources we are not lacking in that department. So first off, the evaluation link, right? You can run Windows Server 2025 in a test environment for 180 days without paying. So I urge you guys to install it, try it, look at the user interface, even work on some simulated workloads and things like that to get used to it. I think you'll really enjoy working with it, and I think it'll build your confidence in recommending it for your customers. We do have the Microsoft Learn page if you want to get nerdy about it, get some certifications, things of that nature. We also have the release from the Windows Server Summit. So if you guys want to look at some of the new features as they describe them, and I kind of hacked through them, you can get a much better feel for what they have to offer through that. We have our own assets, right? So if you want to see the Lenovo view of Windows Server 2025, we have a bunch of great assets, anything from, again, part numbers, offering pages, to videos that show you how to use and leverage some of these features and functionality, to white papers that talk about how we've deployed Windows Server 2025 in different workloads, as well as verticals, education and healthcare and so forth. And then last but not least, the Microsoft Ignite presentation. Again, they do a really good job. It's interesting because between Azure Local, about 2 years before, or S2D, as we mentioned, and the Windows Server 2025 release, I remember going sometimes 6-8 years without even talking about server at Ignite. We'd be the booth there with some server stuff in it, and people would want to go look at our PCs with touchscreens, or they'd be interested in like the thumbprint readers. That was more impressive than Windows Server. So it's really cool to see Microsoft taking a strong liking to Windows Server and promoting it, because it is a great value for customers. All right, last but not least, simple selling stuff, right? Add it to every server. If you're not having the question with your customers, then you're missing out, because they are buying it. And this is a great way to add value, add stickiness to your customers. The good thing is that it is eligible for Top Choice Express. And if these terms don't make sense to you, please reach out to your D&H sales rep. But they are eligible for Top Choice Express and mission acquisition. So if you have customers that are eligible for those, or if you're leveraging Top Choice Express CTO, then please, please, please add Windows Server. Not only will they get a better value, but they will also get some of those benefits that we spoke about earlier. Don't forget, security is top of mind. Microsoft isn't pushing Windows Server 2025 because it's the newest and the greatest. They really want customers to be safe. No customer is going to give a good review of Windows Server, no matter what operating system they're on, if it gets hacked, right, or if something bad happens. So set the customer up for the most success that they can have by getting them on the current Windows version of Windows Server. Windows Server 2025 is a great option for transition. So we all know what's going on with VMware and Broadcom. Windows Server is a great option. Most customers that are running the Broadcom SDI or ESXi have Windows workloads below that, right? They're running Windows Server workloads. So have the conversation. We can have Hyper-V, ESXi to Hyper-V conversations. We can have VVF, VCF to Azure Local conversations, whatever helps you guys out. And we have services as well to migrate customers, workshops if they want to see how things are going to go, or what Azure Local looks like. But absolutely have the conversation is a great way to get them on to a top name brand, like Microsoft, a trusted brand for their next SDI deployment or their next infrastructure deployment. And then last but not least, familiarize yourself using the materials that I gave you, right? So there's no better way. Again, download it, try it out, ask questions. There aren't any dumb questions. Ask questions, get familiarized. We'd love to help you. So with that, I'll take a pause. I'll keep an eye on the question section, but I'll pass it back to Andrew to carry on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Aaron. That's awesome. I'm pretty sure I've been in, multiple trainings of yours, and every time I learned something new, like I didn't even know there was that 180-day kind of trial to test. So that's great to know, and for our partners to know. So I appreciate that. And then like Aaron said, it's attaching these to the opportunities we have existing, right? So I think I was checking the names of everyone here, and I recognize everyone utilizing our inbox. But if you aren't familiar with it, Lenovo server at dnh.com. It goes to our full team here. Joel and Sean are awesome. They're trained up on all this. They can speak to it. But to Aaron's point, let's make sure we are quoting the Microsoft when we're quoting the servers. We can quote that through our D&H team all on one paper. So make it easy for you, make it easier for everyone else. And then, again, just to reiterate, our team is growing, right? 3 to 14, like I said, there's so much opportunity out there that I want you guys to leverage us as much as possible. We can speak to a lot of this, but if not, we also have line of sight to Aaron's team. We work with them a lot. So my hopeful takeaway is you have 3, 5, 10 customers in mind right now that you want to get this information in front of. Let them know, have that conversation, and then come grab us. We can either leverage Aaron and his team, or we can speak to it from there. And then if you weren't familiar, we do also have a program here at D&H with Lenovo. It's called our Score 360 program. So this is for any partners who are authorized and silver level at Lenovo. Essentially, it's a sign up that you sign up, and then everything that you sell Lenovo-wise through D&H you can earn back-end dollars on. This is a specific program that D&H we have with Lenovo. If you're selling Lenovo, there's no reason for you not to sign up. If you weren't familiar with this, please reach out to either myself or the BDM that maps to you. And if you don't know which BDM does map to you, I'm happy to get you, teamed up with them, because we can speak to this and make sure you get signed up. And then obviously everything you sell from there is going to be coming back to you. And then just the last thing I wanted to call out, Lenovo has recently reopened, their renovated executive briefing center in Raleigh. Last time I was there, Aaron gave us a great presentation again. Like I was saying, we are hosting an event there at the end of October. But I want to emphasize this is a limited event. It is an invite-only event. What we are doing this time is we are having our partners come, but each partner, we also want them to bring an end user, right? We want the end user to get there, to see Lenovo, to get very hands-on with it, learn from Lenovo's executives, so we're all working as one, right? And so it is a limited event. If you are interested, please reach out to myself or your BDM. We can see, we can talk about which customer you want to bring, if it'll make sense. And then if we get the approval, then we can get you registered and sign up from there. So I think it's a great opportunity to obviously leverage, not only your partnership with D&H, but also with Lenovo to get some hands-on experience for your customers and obviously get them excited and sold on Lenovo ISG, because I'm highly confident anytime Lenovo goes up against some of those other competitors, that as long as the customer is familiar with Lenovo and learns more about it, it's going to be a win. So please leverage your D&H team, leverage the Lenovo folks. To Aaron's point, we have a ton of resources at your disposal. So I want to make sure you guys are using them. So we are busy and have stuff to do. And with that, and Richard, I see you have a question. I would say reach out to me or your BDM, and we can kind of take that offline, because there are some nuances to it and such. But that's something we can have a quick 10-minute call about as far as the invite for this.